Hi everybody, so as promised this is the second part of the lesson, the tutorial on how to analyse an unseen poem. So this one I've chosen today is In an Artist Studio by Christina Rossetti, and what I would do is each week I'm going to upload a different unseen poem in there as well into Secondary English SOS, so that you'll be able to get a bank of resources and poems you can look at. So I'm going to just show you how you can use those steps that I gave you in video 1 in order to apply it to a poem, so you can actually see all those steps in action and see how we get some meaning out of the poem that you are given. So with this one then, you start with the title. The title is your first impression of the poem. It's the first thing the writer wanted you to see. So you can even start generating some ideas just from this title. So In an Artist Studio. So you think, what would I expect from this poem? So we think, going to be a poem about creativity, maybe about the actual process of making a piece of art, about the role of the artist as well. And you may think this is an interesting one about artists. Do you automatically assume that the artist is a man? And that question is quite interesting in terms of what the poem is actually going to explore. And also, though, we know In an Artist Studio, but we also know that it's by Christina Rossetti, so we know it's a female poet. You are not expected to bring in lots of context for this. It's not a test, of what you know about the poet and about the poet's life. But obviously, Christina Rossetti, we can assume it is a female poet. So that raises interesting questions. Is Christina Rossetti the speaker in this poem? Who's meant to be talking to us? Is this perhaps a bit unusual for a woman? Perhaps to write about the artist studio as well. Perhaps start thinking, are there any kind of stereotypes or assumptions we're bringing to this piece of writing? Now, the next bit, whenever you get a piece of poetry, there are two things that I suggest you do as soon as you get it, before you start analysing, taking words apart, looking for any devices. The first thing is to count the lines. So you can see here, if this happens to you in the exam, then you can go bingo, basically, because you've got 14 lines. It means your luck's in, because 14 lines is the set number of lines in the sonnet form. And you will be expected to bring perhaps a little bit of background knowledge in terms of knowing sonnets are traditionally about love. And they are traditionally as well, if you want to go into a bit more detail, traditionally male speakers. Usually talking about women. It's not usually a form that we associate with female writers, and I will go into that a little bit more in a moment. But straight away you've already got a form point, because you can talk about the sonnet that is meant to be a traditional form about love. As you get a bit more into this, you can see, well, is this poem actually about love, or is it about something else? The other thing to do is the rhyme scheme. So if you're not sure how to do a rhyme scheme, we look here, one face looks out from all his canvases. So that line we label as A. And then we can just go straight to the end of the next line. Leans. Leans doesn't rhyme with canvases. So leans is a new rhyme, so it's a B. Then we go to screens, but that does rhyme with leans. So we give it a B. Loveliness rhymes with canvases as well. No, it's not quite exactly, but it's close enough that we can call it a rhyme. Then we go to dress, which is still keeping that same loveliness canvas, still keeping that same pattern going. Greens, still keeping the pattern from earlier. Means, still keeping the pattern from earlier. And less, so it's repeating A double B A, and then repeating that same pattern A double B A as well. And you can see then each time we get a new rhyme that hasn't been used before in the poem, that gets a new letter. So here we get CD, CD. It's gone into a new use of rhyme, but still with a pattern. And then only right at the very end does it end with another new rhyme. So from having a read through of the poem, once you've had a read through, you've looked at the ideas, you want to start thinking then about what are the main ideas in this piece of writing. And I would say main ideas, this isn't actually a poem about the artist, really it's about the model. The artist model in here. So you could say that perhaps our initial expectations from the title have actually been mixed up a little bit. It's not about what we thought it was. And it's criticising the idea of the male gaze. Now, don't panic if you don't know what the male gaze is. You're not going to be expected to bring in terms like that, although if you can, it's brilliant. But the male gaze is, to put it very, very simply, it's the idea that when men look at women, men always present women in a certain way. And they present women in the way that men want women to look. And so Christina Rossetti is saying, all women in these paintings, this artist's paintings, they all look the same. And they're all turning the woman into an object that reflects the way he wants her to look, not necessarily the way that she actually looks. So I've already touched on this form. We know 14 lines, sonnet. So this sonnet's traditionally about love. But is this a love poem? Not really, is it? Is it mocking the idea of love? Possibly. Also, again, you wouldn't be expected to bring in this much detail, but it is the particular sonnet form is a Petrarchan sonnet. I wouldn't expect you to know that necessarily in an exam when it's unseen off the top of your head, but if you do recognise it, that's brilliant. And obviously that's the kind of extra level of challenge that gets you into the top grades. But you could comment on the fact, sonnet traditionally a male form of poetry, and I would argue that she's mocking the way that men write about women by using the Petrarchan form of the sonnet as well. Also, the fact the rhyme scheme that is quite circular in nature as well, particularly at the beginning, the ABBA. That's a sense, this is what this woman's life is like. Not really going anywhere. She sits in circles. It's the same painting every time. She just maybe wears a different dress. So I'm going to just take you through sort of briefly now, perhaps a few examples of how you can pick out language devices in this. So, we have repetition of one in there, one face looks at from all its canvases, one self-same figure. It's the sense, she always looks the same. There's never any variety. She's never any sense of personality. Nothing individual about any of these pictures. It's her same expression all the time. And then, the verbs like sits, walks, leans. That sense, she's just going through different poses, different actions. Always focused on the model's appearance as well. And perhaps I always like that idea of, she's hidden just behind those screens. That sense, we can't see her properly. The artist has not really captured her the way that she is meant to be. He's captured her the way that he wants her to be. And we can see that in the next bit, this collection of different outfits. You can also imagine her. She's like a doll being dressed up in different outfits every time. She's like Queen in the ruby dress, then the girl in the green dress, the saint and angel. And notice as well these figures, they're all very pure and innocent. This is how he wants her to look. It's almost like this is how men want their women to look. Very pure, very saint-like, very innocent, but not really how she is. No variety. These are all very similar. He's just dressing her up in a different outfit each day and then painting the same picture. And here we've got the device caesura. So if you're not sure what caesura is, it's where you have this break in the middle of a line of poetry. So we've got it here, anywhere where you break in the middle of a line. And I think that, reflects the idea, it isn't natural. Broken up, artificial, a different pose, a different dress every day. None of it's real. None of it's how she's really meant to be. And in the next bit then, this idea, he feeds upon her face by day and night. It makes him sound like a vampire, doesn't it? That image of feed, that verb there, very powerful. The alliteration as well feeds upon the face, emphasising the way he's consuming her. And she's not allowed to show any real emotion. She with true kind eyes looks back on him. She's not allowed to show how she really feels about this. He still keeps painting her the way that he wants her to be. And there's this sense, he's consuming her every day, the person she really is, rather than bringing her to life. He's actually making her sort of less real every day. And that one with waiting as well, I think that alliteration again emphasises the fading. You can hear that kind of fading away and one with waiting as well. He's destroying her, not creating. And then, these two last lines as well, not as she is, but was when hope shone bright. Not as she is, but as she feels his dream. So that, and again, that repetition, that's not as she is. And that emphasis, the stress on not as well. This is not the real woman she is. He's written his own story onto her. And, that sense, again, he's drained all the life and she feels his dream. It's all about his dream, what he wants. Nothing in there about, what she wants, the person that she really is. So there's lots and lots of different ideas in there. So obviously in the next stage in this process that I'm going to deal with in another video would be obviously looking at how to organise these ideas but also you've also got comparison in there as well. So again, in the next video, what I'm going to do is bring in another poem, and then we'll look at comparison, and we will eventually get to sort of how to structure this essay. So there's going to be more parts of this to follow, but this one is just to kind of show you how you would approach that unseen poem, you know, the ways that you would go in, how you would try and get detail out. And it's just about getting what you can out of it. Remember, don't panic. Everyone is in the same position. But see what kind of meaning you can get from the poem. So I'll see you again soon for the next part when we'll start looking at comparison.